Off the coast of Brazil lies an island so deadly, the government forbids anyone from stepping foot on it. Was Snake Island remains forbidden, sealed away by law, or still remain? The mystery begins now.
Off the coast of Brazil lies an island so deadly, the government forbids anyone from stepping foot on it. A lonely mass of land rising from the Atlantic waters, cliffs covered in mist. A jungle so dense that even sunlight struggles to find its way through the canopy. From a distance, it looks peaceful, untouched, almost beautiful. But those who know its name speak it with unease. Ilha de Queimada Grande, the place most people call Snake Island. It is not just another remote island. It is not just another patch of forgotten land swallowed by the sea. It is something else, something alive with danger. Every rock, every tree, every patch of grass hides secret. The kind of secret that crawls, coils, and strikes without warning. The kind of secret that turns an entire island into one of the most forbidden places on Earth. For centuries, local fishermen told their children never to sail too close. Boats that drift near its shores often return empty, as if the ocean itself swallows those who try to approach. On nights when the fog rolls heavy and the waves crash hard against the rocks, some swear they hear hissing carried by the wind, like whispers of an ancient curse. But the question rises again and again, why would nature create a place like this? Why fill a single island with so many serpents that no man, woman, or child can walk its paths without fearing death at every step? The story begins long ago, when the sea was a highway for traders, smugglers, and explorers. They charted the Brazilian coast, drawing maps that hinted at this strange island. Few dared to set foot there, and those who did were never seen again. Rumors spread of treasure hidden within its jungle. Others said the island was a prison built by nature itself, a cage for creatures too dangerous to live elsewhere. But myths can only live so long before someone feels the need to test them. The first official records of Snake Island speak of soldiers and settlers. They built a small lighthouse on its highest point, a guiding light to warn sailors away from the rocks. A family was chosen to keep that light burning. Their duty was simple: protect others by living on the edge of danger. Yet the story told by locals does not end with safety. It ends with horror. The tale of the lighthouse keepers drifts between fact and legend, but it is said that one stormy night, as the family prepared for sleep, the snakes came. Not one, not two, but many, pouring in through cracks in the walls, falling from the ceiling, crawling up from the floorboards. By dawn, the house was silent. When a passing ship anchored days later, the family was gone. Their remains scattered, their fate sealed by fangs. After that, the lighthouse was automated, its light flickering without human hands. And the island was left to its own rulers, the vipers. Yet the mystery grows deeper still. This is not an island filled with ordinary snakes. No, this island is home to one of the most dangerous serpents known to man, a creature born in isolation, cut off from the mainland for thousands of years. A serpent whose venom does not simply kill, it destroys flesh and blood with terrifying speed. The golden lancehead viper. But here is the strange truth. There are not a handful of them. There are not dozens. There are thousands. It is said that in some places, a person cannot walk a single step without coming face to face with death. They fall from the branches above. They hide in the undergrowth below. Every movement of wind, every crack of twig, could mean something watching, waiting, ready. Imagine walking into that jungle, your heart beating faster with every step. The silence pressing against your ears. No bird singing. No animals running. Only the softest of leaves brushing together. And then the sudden strike of something unseen. Why are there so many? Why only here? Some scientists say the sea rose thousands of years ago, cutting this land away from the mainland. The snakes were trapped, forced to adapt, forced to grow more deadly to survive. Others whisper a darker tale, that the island was cursed, marked by something ancient, left as a warning to humanity. But there is another possibility, one that belongs to the realm of conspiracy. Some claim Snake Island was once used for experiments, that men tried to control nature here, breeding creatures for war or power, that when the project failed, the island was abandoned, sealed off, left to rot with its monstrous creation. No matter the truth, the Brazilian government has made the law clear. No one may enter without permission. No tourists, no treasure hunters, no wandering explorers. Only a handful of scientists are allowed, and even they enter only under strict watch, equipped with heavy gear, their lives hanging on every careful step. Still, the forbidden always tempts. There are whispers of smugglers who risk everything to set foot there. Some believe ancient treasure is hidden among the rocks, guarded by the serpents. Gold from lost civilizations, relics from forgotten empires. Others say the snakes themselves are worth fortunes, their venom more valuable than diamonds. And so men have tried. They set foot on the cursed soil, searching for riches, but most never return. And when their boats are found drifting on waves, there is no trace of their bodies. Only silence, only mystery. The sea holds the island close, as if protecting its dark secret. The mist hides its cliffs like a veil. From far away, it could be mistaken for paradise, a lush green crown rising from the water. But step too close, and paradise becomes nightmare. For those who listen carefully, the island tells its story. The air grows heavy. The shadows stretch long. The silence itself becomes a warning. Every part of the land whispers the same message. You are not welcome here. And perhaps that is why Snake Island fascinates the world. Because in an age when men have walked on the moon, when satellites circle the earth, when maps are filled with names and borders, here still lies a place man cannot claim. A place ruled not by humans, but by serpents. A forbidden land. A no-go zone. A reminder that nature does not bow to human power. Yet questions remain. Why did the snakes evolve in this way? Why does the island feel more like a curse than a habitat? And what secrets lie hidden in the jungle, guarded by creatures that strike faster than thought? Off the coast of Brazil lies an island no one may enter, an island of death and legend, an island that breathes with mystery and waits in silence for the next soul brave or foolish enough to set foot on its cursed ground. On the highest cliff of Snake Island once stood a lonely lighthouse, a tower of stone built not to welcome visitors, but to warn them away. Its light cut through fog and storms, guiding ships away from the rocks and the cursed jungle beyond. But the story of that lighthouse is not one of safety. It is a story wrapped in whispers, a tale locals still tell with lowered voices when night falls. For within that tower once lived a family, a keeper to light, his wife, and their children. They were chosen to guard the flame, and their fate became a legend darker than the waves crashing below. The keeper was said to be a strong man, hardened by the sea. His duty was clear. Each evening, he climbed the narrow steps of the tower, lit the lamp, and made sure it burned through the night. His wife kept the home, tending to their children, while the ocean roared endlessly outside their walls. To many, it seemed a life of purpose, yet also a life of exile. For who would wish to live surrounded by an island crawling with vipers? Still, the government placed him there, believing the lighthouse to be too important to abandon. Ships needed warning. The light had to shine, and so the family obeyed. But with each passing night, unease grew heavier inside those stone walls. The jungle pressed close, alive with shadows that moved too quickly. The cries of seabirds often turned into silence. And in that silence, the family sometimes heard something else, a sound soft as breath, a sound that seemed to come from all directions at once, the sound of scales sliding against wood and stone. At first, it was small, a snake coiled near the door, another resting on the windowsill. The keeper killed what he could, tossing their bodies far from the house. Yet the more he struck, the more appeared. It was as though the island had taken notice of his defiance. His children grew restless. At night, they whispered of shapes moving on the walls, of eyes watching them through cracks and shutters. His wife begged him to leave, to return to the mainland, but his duty held him there. The light could not go dark. And then came the storm. The sea rose with fury, waves smashing against the cliffs, rain falling in sheets that blurred the horizon. The keeper lit the lamp as always, his heart steady. But that night the snakes came in numbers beyond imagining. They slithered through cracks in the floorboards. They dropped from the rafters. They pushed through broken tiles and hidden holes in the walls. The house became a cage filled with hissing death. Some say the family tried to flee into the storm, running across the rocky ground with lightning splitting the sky. Others say they locked themselves inside, praying for dawn as the serpents poured in like a flood. But whatever truth lies buried in the island soil, the ending is always the same. By morning, the light still burned, but the keeper and his family were gone. Days later, when a passing ship anchored near the shore, sailors climbed the cliffs to find the house silent. Inside, only scattered belongings remained. A doll with one glass eye staring. A chair tipped over, as if knocked in panic. The lamp still burning in the tower, though no hand had tended it. The bodies were never found. Only whispers remained. Fishermen carried the story back to the mainland. They said the snakes had not killed the family by chance. No, they said the island itself had hunger for human lives. That the vipers were not mere animals, but guardians of something hidden deep in the jungle. Something men were never meant to discover. And when the keeper's family came too close, the guardians acted. Others told a different tale. They said the family went mad, that isolation broke their minds, and in their madness they saw snakes where none existed. That perhaps the island did not kill them at all. Perhaps they walked into the sea willingly, vanishing into the waves. But if that were true, who kept the lamp burning? Who climbed those steps night after night until the storm carried them away? The mystery thickened, as mysteries always do when truth is lost to silence. And so the legend of the lighthouse keeper grew. Parents told it to their children as warning. Sailors told it to each other as they passed the island's shadow. Even scientists years later, when they stepped cautiously onto shore, spoke of the tale in hushed voices. What makes the story so haunting is not simply the death. It is the thought of being hunted in the one place that should have been safe. A home meant to shelter a family, turned into a trap, the walls themselves betraying them as serpents poured through cracks. The thought creeps into the mind like a shadow. If safety cannot be found within walls, where then can it be found? Psychologists who study fear say the story lingers because it strikes something deep inside us. The idea of invasion, the idea of no escape, the idea of being surrounded in the night by something silent, watching, waiting. It is not only a tale of snakes. It is a tale of human weakness when placed against the endless patience of nature. But not all agree. Some believe the story is nothing more than folklore, a tale woven by locals to scare off treasure hunters and unwanted visitors, to keep curious eyes away from Snake Island secrets. After all, what better way to protect a forbidden place than with a story so chilling no one dares to test it? And yet, why does the government keep the island sealed? Why do they still forbid entry to this day? If the legend were only a fisherman's tale, why place guards on its shores? Why build fences of law around a patch of land so small it could vanish on the map without notice? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. Perhaps it was a family, and perhaps they did fall to the serpents. Whether the snakes came as chance or curse, the result is the same. The lighthouse stands as a silent reminder, a tower that once shone with human hope, now reduced to an empty shell where only the wind and the hiss of scales remain. Imagine it now, standing at the edge of that cliff, the sea stretching endlessly, waves breaking hard against the rocks, the tower rising tall and gray, its glass shattered, its walls scarred by time. Inside, the echo of footsteps that no longer walk, and all around, the jungle pressing close, filled with eyes unseen. The legend of the lighthouse keeper endures not because of proof, but because of feeling. Because even the strongest heart hesitates when it hears of a family hunted in their sleep. Because every person, whether man, woman, child, or elder, knows the meaning of fear in the night. That moment when shadows seem alive, when safety seems fragile, when silence feels heavy with unseen presence. Snake Island took that feeling and carved it into stone. The story lives on as long as the island stands. Some may call it myth, others may call it truth. But when the mist drifts across the water and the light of the moon touches the ruined tower, the legend breathes again. For the island remembers. The sea remembers, and those who sail too close may still hear, if they listen carefully, the faint echo of voices swallowed long ago, voices carried on the wind, whispers of family who lit a light against the dark, only to be consumed by it. The lighthouse was built to guide men away from danger. Instead, it became part of the danger itself, a place where human lives ended, leaving only questions behind. Was it the snakes? Was it madness? Or was it the island itself, alive with hunger, reaching out to claim those who dare to call it home? No answer has ever been found. And perhaps that is the true power of the tale. For what is more haunting than a question with no end? What is more lasting than a mystery too deep to solve? The story of the lighthouse keeper drifts like mist across the sea, never solid, never gone. A reminder that some places on this earth were never meant to be lived in. Some lights are not meant to guide us, but to warn us. And some islands are not meant for human footsteps at all. And so, the legend endures, not written in books, not carved in stone, but carried in whispers, in fear and memory. A story that belongs to Snake Island as much as the vipers themselves. A story that asks, again and again, was it the snakes that killed them or the island itself? In hidden corners of libraries, in dusty drawers of forgotten archives, and in the locked cabinets of naval officers, there are maps that are never meant to be seen by curious eyes. Among them lies one marked with a name that chills those who dare whisper it. Ilha de Queimada Grande. The island men call Snake Island. The parchment looks ordinary at first, a blot of green drawn against the endless blue of the Atlantic. But the closer one looks, the stranger it feels. Each line seems heavy, as if ink itself remembers the fate of those who charted it. Some maps are torn, their edges burned, others stained by salt or by something darker, as though the paper itself carries the curse of the island. Explorers and scientists who gather in secret circles sometimes bring out these maps, sliding them across tables late at night. Their voices fall to whispers. Some argue over the coastline's shape, others over the marked spots that seem to show paths into the jungle. But one detail binds them all together. Every map of Snake Island feels unfinished, incomplete, as if no hand has ever truly lived long enough to finish its story. The earliest naval records speak of strange sightings, sailors passing two close reported lights flickering on the cliffs, long before the lighthouse was built. Some claim to hear cries carried by the sea, though no village stood on that land. And when storms forced them to anchor near its shore, the records grew darker. Entire crews returned shaken, pale, speaking of shadows moving the trees, shadows that moved too low, too fast to be men. In one logbook, a captain wrote his mate stepping onto the rocks for fresh water. Minutes later, the man screamed. When they reached him, his body was still warm, yet lifeless. Two small punctures glowing red on his skin. His face was twisted as if frozen in terror. The crew dragged him back, but by morning, 3 more lay dead, each with the same marks. The captain ordered sails raised, and the island was left behind. On the parchment map, he drew a single word beside its outline: condemned. Other journals tell of boats drifting ashore days after leaving the island. Inside, sailors slumped over their oars, their flesh pale, their lips blue. Not a wound on their bodies, except the small punctures. Not enough blood remained to guess how long they had lived after the strike. Those journals often end mid-sentence, ink smudged as though the writer's hand fell still in the moment of fear. These fragments spread like whispers among explorers, each story different, yet all echoing the same warning. Snake Island was no safe harbor. It was a trap waiting in the mist. And still, some could not resist, for in the margins of those cursed maps lay hints of something else: treasure. Smugglers spoke of gold buried by pirates long ago, left on the island when storms forced them ashore. Others claimed ancient tribes once worshipped there, leaving behind relics carved from stone and bone, relics of power. Some said the snakes themselves were guardians placed to protect what lay hidden beneath the earth. And so men drew maps of their own, each line a promise of riches, if only one dared enough to follow it. But greed has a price. One such map, found decades later in the belongings of a dead explorer, shows a path winding from the cliffs into the heart of the jungle. Red marks the trail, each one labeled with a name crossed out. At the end, a circle marked for the explorer called the Hollow. No one knows if he ever reached it. The journal that held the map ends with a final line scrawled in haste. They are watching from the trees. Nothing more. Scientists, too, could not stay away. For them, it was not treasure of gold, but treasure of knowledge. They believed the snakes, isolated for thousands of years, might hold secrets to medicine. Venom so powerful could also heal, if only one could study it. And so expeditions were planned, permission sought. But the few who returned alive spoke with haunted eyes. One scientist described walking into silence, so deep it pressed against his skull. No bird sang, no insects buzzed, only the constant feeling of being followed. At night, as they set up camp, shadows moved just beyond the firelight. And in the morning, when they packed to leave, they found trails in the grass circling their tents. Trails of serpents too many to count. His map, drawn after the fact, is marked not with paths, but with warnings. Circles labeled "Do Not Enter," crosses where men disappeared. He swore the island itself shifted, paths vanishing overnight, as if the jungle worked to confuse them. Detective-minded scholars pieced together these maps and accounts, layering them one over another. The more they studied, the stranger became. Distances did not match. Landmarks shifted. What should have been a straight coastline bent like a serpent's body, coiling tighter the longer one stared. It was as if Snake Island refused to be measured, its true form hidden behind illusions. And then there were the bodies. Again and again, reports surfaced of corpses found near its shores. Fishermen unlucky enough to drift too close. Smugglers who believed in fortune more than fear. Their bodies carried the same marks. Small punctures, flesh darkened, eyes wide, frozen in the moment of horror. Always the same, always unexplained. Medical examiners who studied the remains called the venom unlike any other. Not simply deadly, but cruel. It worked fast, burning through blood, stopping the heart in moments. And yet in some cases, the victims lived long enough to feel every second of the venom's journey, their bodies locked in agony before the end. What kind of nature creates such a thing? What kind of island breeds death in so many forms? The maps remain as silent witnesses, each line a testimony to fear. Some show careful detail, every curve of the coast drawn with precision. Others are frantic sketches, as if drawn in haste before the writer fled. A few are little more than scribbles, the outline of the island barely formed, as though the artist could not bear to look at it for long. Those who have studied the maps claim they feel wrong to hold. One explorer wrote that when he touched the parchment, he felt a chill spread through his hand, up his arm, into his chest. He could not explain it, but he swore the map pulsed like a living thing. Another refused to even unfold his, insisting that the lines shifted when his eyes were turned away. Over time, the maps vanished into private collections, some locked away in universities, others hoarded by secret societies fascinated by forbidden lands. To most of the world, Snake Island exists only as rumor, its true face hidden by those who fear it or by those who wish to claim it. And yet, the island remains untouched, waiting, its outline still drawn on charts, its name whispered with unease. The forbidden map of Snake Island is more than ink on parchment. It is a story told by the dead, a warning written in salt and blood. It is a proof of something too dangerous to reveal, too powerful to forget. Those who dare study it must decide what they believe. Is it simply land infested with serpents? Or is it something greater, something darker? A prison holding secrets man was never meant to uncover? The truth may lie in the maps, hidden in the lines no one dares to follow. But for now, the island keeps its silence. The snakes keep their vigil, and the maps remain locked in shadows, cursed by the hands that drew them, cursed by the eyes that lingered too long. For in the end, a map is not just a guide, it is a promise. And the maps of Snake Island promise only one thing, that those who walk its paths will not return. There came a time when whispers and maps were not enough. Legends could only circle for so long before men decided to test them. The first modern expeditions to Snake Island were not led by treasure hunters or fishermen, but by those who believed in knowledge. Scientists, biologists, and explorers who wanted to see with their own eyes what the world had forbidden. The sea carried them across restless waves, their boat slicing toward the mist that curled around the island's cliffs. From a distance, the jungle appeared lush, green, almost inviting. Yet those on board felt their hearts tighten as the shore drew near. They knew the stories, and still, they stepped forward as if curiosity itself had them in chains. The moment their boots touched land, the silence struck them. It was a silence of absence. No birds circling in the sky, no insects buzzing in the air, no rustle of monkeys in the branches, only the sound of waves fading behind them and their own breathing growing louder. It was not the peace of nature. It was the pause of something watching. They walked into the forest, their eyes adjusting to the dim light under the canopy. Leaves thick as walls blocked the sun. Vines hung heavy, dripping with moisture. Every step cracked twigs, and with each crack, the silence seemed to lean closer. Some of the explorers carried sticks, others machetes, but none of these could ease the fear swelling inside their chests. It did not take long before they saw it. A movement on the ground, quick and sharp. A snake coiled among the roots, golden skin glinting faintly. Its head lifted, tongue tasting the air. The men froze. One step closer, and it struck fast as lightning. Its fangs cut the air inches from a boot. The man leapt back, his heart pounding. Already, the island was reminding them of its law. As they pressed deeper, they saw more. Not one, not two, but dozens scattered across the path. Some curled in the grass, others hidden beneath leaves. And then from above, the branches trembled. A snake slid down from the tree, landing soundlessly on the soil. Its body rippled as it moved, eyes fixed on intruders. One man whispered, voice shaking, that even the shadows looked venomous. The explorers realized the truth. This was not an island filled with snakes. This was a kingdom, and they had walked into the den of its rulers. One scientist bent to take notes, his pen scratching quickly across paper, but his hand trembled as more vipers emerged from the undergrowth. Their scales blending so perfectly with the earth that each step felt like a gamble with death. The ground itself seemed to writhe, alive with movement, and always, the silence pressed on them, broken only by the occasional hiss that seemed to echo from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air grew heavy. The forest smelled of damp leaves and something else, something metallic, sharp, like blood long spilled. They tried to keep steady, yet fear seeped into their bones. One misstep could mean the end. They knew the venom of these serpents was not ordinary. They had studied reports. They knew a single bite could melt flesh, thin the blood, stop a heart in minutes. And here, surrounded by hundreds, perhaps thousands, there was no escape. Deeper still, they pressed on, their boots slipping in the mud, their bodies dripping with sweat. Every moment felt stretched, elongated, as though time itself moved slower under the jungle's shadow. A shadow where even their minds began to play tricks. Shapes moved in the corner of vision. Branches looked like snakes. Vines looked like coiling bodies. The fear grew not only from what they saw, but from what they thought they saw. Psychological dread took root. What if they had already been bitten without knowing? What if the venom flowed quietly, waiting to strike their hearts when least expected? Their own bodies felt like enemies. Every twitch of muscle, every bead of sweat became a question. The leader of the expedition forced them forward. He believed the snakes were not random, but patterned. He believed there was a logic to their numbers, a reason for their gathering. And so, they charted their steps, marking trees, sketching maps, their pens scratching like whispers against the silence. But as they stopped to rest, one man cried out. His leg had brushed against the grass, and from the green leapt a golden head. The serpent struck before he could react. 2 small punctures appeared on his ankle. His scream tore through the silence. The other scrambled, pulling him back, tying cloth around his leg, trying to slow the venom. His face grew pale, his breath ragged. The scientist holding him whispered that the venom was too fast, too strong. His body shivered, his eyes widened, and within minutes, he was gone. His lips turned blue, his skin drained of color, his body slack in the arms of his companions. The group stared in horror. One moment he had stood with them, alive. The next, he was nothing but silence. The jungle seemed to lean closer, as if listening. The snakes slithered through the grass, circling the group, their tongues flicking, their bodies rippling with hunger. Fear gnawed at them. They knew then that this place was not simply dangerous. It was designed to break the human spirit, to show them how small, how fragile, how helpless they truly were. And yet, some part of them still pressed forward. Curiosity, or perhaps madness, drove them deeper. They wanted to see more, to uncover what secrets this island of serpents hid. They moved with trembling hands, stepping slowly, their eyes darting with every motion. As the forest thickened, the silence grew heavier. No breeze moved. The air hung still, suffocating, as though the island itself held its breath. Then came another sound, faint at first, then stronger, a chorus of hissing rising from the ground, from the trees, from the shadows. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, surrounding them. The explorers froze, their hearts hammering. The jungle was alive. Every branch seemed to move. Every patch of soil seemed to writhe. They could not tell where the snakes began and where the land ended. They realized in that moment that they had entered the serpent's den, and there was no line between earth and flesh, between shadow and predator. Their minds cracked under pressure. One man swore he saw eyes glowing in the dark. Another said the snakes whispered his name. Panic swelled like a wave. Some wanted to flee, others wanted to press on. But no matter what they chose, the island had already marked them. Every step forward felt like betrayal to survival, and every step back felt like surrender to madness. The den did not allow choice. It only allowed fear. And so the explorers stood there, surrounded, their breaths shallow, their nerves stretched thin. The island offered them no welcome, no mercy, only the endless hiss of serpents and the certainty that they were trespassers in a place not meant for man. The deeper the researchers pushed into Snake Island, the stranger their observations became. At first, they thought it was only numbers. Too many vipers in too little space. But soon, the truth unsettled them in ways they could not explain. The snakes did not appear randomly, like wild creatures should. They appeared with purpose. One group of scientists marked the ground, counting each serpent they passed. Yet when they circled back minutes later, the same spots held more snakes, as if they had been placed there deliberately, as if the island itself had moved its pieces like a player on a board. Another researcher wrote in his journal that the snakes seemed to anticipate them, paths that were clear on the way and became blocked on the way out. Branches shook above them, and vipers dropped like silent arrows, landing without sound, their golden bodies coiled and ready. It was as though the island had eyes, eyes that never blinked, eyes that knew where each step would fall. The more they studied, the less it felt like biology. It began to feel like strategy. Fear grew heavy in their bones. They could not shake the thought that they were being guided, herded even, towards something unseen. It was not simply survival instinct. It was design. Late at night, when the campfires burned low, the researchers whispered among themselves. Some claimed the snakes watched them, not with animal curiosity, but with something colder, more intelligent. Others said they heard sounds in the canopy. A hiss too long to be natural, a whisper stretched across the leaves, as if the jungle itself were breathing. And yet, despite their fear, the scientists recorded everything. They measured, they noted, they filled their notebooks with sketches and numbers. They told themselves this was science, but in their hearts, something else gnawed at them. This was not the order of nature they had known. This was something older. For centuries, local folklore had spoken of a serpent god, a creature left behind when the world was young. Some said it was placed on the island as punishment. Others said it was sent as protection. It was said the god's children spread across the land, guarding a treasure buried deep in the jungle, a treasure too dangerous for man to claim. The scientists laughed at these stories in daylight. They called them superstition. But in the darkness, when the canopy swallowed the moon, their laughter died. For each hiss in the night carried weight. Each shadow seemed to lean close. And when they slept, their dreams filled with scales brushing across their skin, fangs glinting in the dark, and a voice too ancient to name whispering from the treetops. One morning, as they followed a narrow trail, the team found carvings on stone, weathered and broken, but still clear enough to see the shape. A serpent coiled in a spiral, its mouth open wide, fangs bared. Beneath it, markings none of them could translate, but the image was enough. They knew this was not only myth. People had once come here. People had worshipped. And if worship had roots, then perhaps the legend of the serpent god was not so far from truth. The leader of the team argued it was coincidence. He said ancient tribes carved snakes everywhere in Brazil. But even he could not explain why the jungle seemed to guide them directly to that stone. Why vipers lined the edges of the path as though escorting them to an altar. Psychological fear seeped into their minds. One man confessed he felt the snakes were listening to his thoughts. Another swore he heard his name whispered in the rustle of leaves. They began to argue, their nerves fraying, suspicion growing between them. If the island could control where the snakes moved, could it also control their minds? Their journals reveal a war between science and myth. The men wrote of venom samples, of behavior studies, of evolutionary adaptation. But between those lines, darker notes appeared. They are appearing where they should not. The trees are speaking. It does not want us to leave. One night, the group awoke to find their camp surrounded. Dozens of vipers lay coiled at the edges of the firelight, unmoving, their eyes glinting like wet stones. The men froze, holding their breath, waiting for the strike. But the snakes did not move. They simply remained, watching, until dawn broke. Then, as silently as they had come, they slid back into the jungle. Why gather and not strike? Why hold vigil through the night? The men had no answer, but the memory haunted them. It was not random. It was not instinct. It was intention. And so, the legend of the serpent god grew heavier in their minds. Perhaps the snakes were not animals at all. Perhaps they were extensions of something else, something greater, a will that reached through every scale, every fong, every silent movement in the grass. If there was a treasure hidden on Snake Island, it was not gold or jewels. It was knowledge, knowledge guarded so fiercely that even a glance toward it demanded blood. Knowledge too dangerous for human hands. As the days passed, the men grew restless. Their food ran low, their water grew scarce, and their nerves cracked under the weight of endless fear. One of them snapped. He shouted at the jungle, cursing the serpents, daring them to strike. The others tried to silence him, but it was too late. From above, a snake dropped, striking his shoulder. He fell screaming, his veins burning, his cries fading into silence within minutes. The rest of the team could only watch. They had no power. They had no defense. The island had chosen its moment, and it had taken another life. In the journals left behind, the surviving scientists wrote with shaking hands. They no longer tried to explain what they saw. They no longer drew neat diagrams or measured distances. Instead, their words grew frantic, scrawled across pages. It knows where we go. It is guiding us. The whispers come from the canopy. By the time they left the island, their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. They carried samples, yes, but they also carried fear that never left them. Some never returned to the field again. Others destroyed their notes, claiming no good could come from studying such a place. Yet the whispers continued. Other explorers read those journals in secret. Some dismissed them. Others believed them. And still, the question lingered. Was this pure biology or something more? Science says the snakes adapted, evolved in isolation, their numbers growing as nature demanded. But myth says the island was chosen, a prison or a temple for a serpent god whose treasure lies hidden still. Between those two truths lies a shadow, and in that shadow, the mystery breeds. To walk under the canopy of Snake Island is to feel that shadow pressing down. Every step questions the boundary between fact and fear, between science and story. The vipers do not simply live there. They rule, and whether by instinct or by something older, they appear where no animal should, guiding trespassers toward madness or death. The whispers in the canopy remain. Some say it is only the wind through the leaves. Others say it is the hiss of countless snakes. But those who stood beneath those branches know better. It is the voice of the island itself, a voice that does not welcome, but warns, a voice that tells every intruder the same thing: leave or be consumed. Every island has its ruler. On Snake Island, that ruler is not the jungle, not the sea, not even the silence that smothers every living sound. The true master of this place is a serpent found nowhere else on earth, the golden lancehead viper. Its scales shimmer with a pale gold that seems almost unnatural, as if sunlight itself clings to its skin. But there is nothing warm about it. That golden glow is not beauty, it is warning, the mark of a killer shaped by isolation, honed by hunger, sharpened by time. For thousands of years, the golden lancehead has ruled its kingdom without rival. No predator dares challenge it. No prey escapes it. Its body is swift, its fangs long. Its venom unlike anything the human mind can truly imagine. Scientists who studied the venom under glass described it with cold words, but their eyes betrayed the truth. This was not ordinary poison. This was nature's experiment in destruction. The venom of the golden lancehead does not simply kill. It burns. It melts. It destroys flesh, tissue, and blood so quickly that even the strongest heart cannot fight it. Imagine for a moment a single bite, 2 punctures on the skin. In seconds, pain flares like fire. Blood turns thin, spilling through vessels that can no longer hold it. Muscles weaken, organs fail. Within minutes, the body is not only dying, it is dissolving from within. Doctors who have treated rare survivors describe wounds so severe that flesh simply disappears, leaving craters of exposed bone. A horror not from fiction, but from biology. A design so brutal, it feels less like evolution and more like intention. And here lies the question that has haunted scientists for decades. How could such a serpent evolve in such a place? Why does one small island breed a killer more deadly than almost anything else on Earth? The answer lies in isolation. Thousands of years ago, rising seas cut the island away from a mainland. The snakes trapped there had no mammals to hunt, no large animals to feed on. Only small birds landed on the cliffs, quick and fleeting. To survive, the vipers needed venom so fast, so lethal, that even a fluttering bird could not escape. And so, over countless generations, nature sharpened its blade. The golden lancehead became an assassin, its venom turning from death into destruction. But to those who walk the island, this explanation does not ease the fear. It deepens it. For if nature could create this, what else could it create given time and silence? When researchers first held a golden lancehead, they described it as holding death in their hands. Its body coiled tightly, muscles ready to strike. Its tongue flicked, tasting the air, sensing the heartbeat of the man who carried it. The snake knew. It always knew. And though it remained still, the fear of one strike hung heavier than any storm. One researcher wrote that the serpent did not feel like an animal. It felt like design, as though the island itself had built it piece by piece, as a weapon, a perfect assassin guarding secrets no man should uncover. Some even whispered another thought. What if this was no accident? What if the island was more than nature? What if it was a laboratory of death, where something or someone had once shaped life to their will? The idea strikes like science fiction, yet the evidence unsettles. The golden lancehead is found nowhere else. Its venom is unlike others of its kind. Its numbers are greater than balance should allow. It is as if the island has been cultivating not just survival, but extermination. Legends blend with science here. Ancient folklore tells of a serpent god left behind to guard forbidden treasure. Could this be the god's chosen form? A golden serpent born to strike fear into all who dare step on the land? Or could it be the remnants of something older, experiments, rituals, forces unknown, shaping nature into weapon? The truth may never be clear, but those who stand face to face with the golden lancehead know one thing. It is not an ordinary creature. It is death wrapped in scales, patient and silent, waiting for the trespasser to stumble. Imagine the psychological weight of walking among them. Each step could stir one from the grass. Each branch above could hold a coiled body, ready to drop. Each shadow could be its form, blending into the earth. The mind begins to break, seeing serpents where there may be none, and missing those that lie inches away. The explorers who faced them rolled a silence that fell before a strike, a silence that felt like the pause before judgment. And then, the lightning-fast movement, the flash of gold, the puncture of fangs. No cry, no warning, only the sudden end. To witness such a death is to question the very balance of the world. Why would nature allow such power to grow in one place? Why would it create venom that kills not just swiftly, but cruelly? Perhaps the answer is simple. Because no human was ever meant to walk there. The golden lancehead does not leave its island. It cannot swim far. Its prison is also its kingdom. But within those cliffs, it reigns like a king untouched. A king, not a crown or throne, but a venom and silence. And so, the story spread. Smugglers who tried to capture them spoke of fortunes. Their venom worth more than gold, their rarity making them priceless. Yet, few lived long enough to bring them out. The jungle took them, the serpents claimed them, and the island remained sealed. Those who did succeed returned haunted. They described cages that rattled in the night, snakes striking endlessly at invisible foes, as if they sensed something unseen. One smuggler swore he saw the snake watching him with more than hunger, with knowing. He released it into the forest days later, unable to bear its gaze. Even in captivity, the golden lancehead is not ordinary. It refuses food for weeks, yet strikes with precision when least expected. It moves like liquid shadow, each scale sliding without sound. Its very presence unnerves, as if it carries the island's curse in its blood. For some, the golden lancehead is a symbol. For others, it is a warning. But for all who know of it, the meaning is clear. Snake Island is not just dangerous because of numbers. It is dangerous because of perfection. It has created an assassin more lethal than any weapon man could forge. And so, science and myth stand side by side. Science calls it evolution. Myth calls it guardian. But both agree it is not to be taken lightly. The golden lancehead viper, glowing faintly in the dim light of the jungle, embodies everything forbidden about Snake Island. It is beauty and horror, life and death, nature and nightmare woven together. It is a reminder that there are places in this world we cannot master, creatures we cannot tame, powers we cannot control. But the island does not need armies. It does not need walls. It has the golden lancehead, a serpent whose venom is swifter than thought, deadlier than fear, more final than any curse. A serpent that proves some lands are not meant for human hands, and some secrets are meant to remain in silence. The golden lancehead is more than snake. It is the island itself, breathing, watching, waiting, a creation of isolation, a weapon of nature, a living warning to mankind. And in its golden scales gleams a message older than time. This is not your world. This is not your place. Leave or be ended. Legends alone could not keep every man away. Gold calls louder than fear. And so, there were those who tried to conquer Snake Island. Smugglers, treasure hunters, explorers who believed that fortune waited among its cliffs. They carried guns, machetes, maps drawn in secret. But the island needed none of those things. It had patience. It had silence. And it had its serpents. The first stories tell of small boats pushing off under the cover of night. Men rowed with hushed voices, their eyes on the fog-shrouded mass ahead. They told each other the snakes were only legend, that fear had made the stories grow larger with time. Their hearts burned with greed, and greed made them blind. Some of those boats never returned. Days later, fragments washed ashore, splintered wood, a lantern, a boot worn down by salt. The men who waited on the coast spoke of the sea carrying whispers. Whispers of screams too faint to be real, yet clear enough to chill the blood. Others did return, but not alive. Bodies floated back, their faces pale, their skin marked by punctures that told the same tale over and over again. Snake Island had no need for war. Its borders were guarded by death itself. Yet still, the desperate came. Smugglers were among the boldest. They believed the golden lancehead vipers could be captured, their venom worth fortunes on black markets. They carried cages, ropes, sticks to pin the creatures. They told themselves they would be careful, that money would protect them. But money has no power against venom. One smuggler's journal was found years later, water-stained and half destroyed. His words began with triumph. He wrote of seeing the snakes in their hundreds, of catching glimpses of golden scales in the branches. But the final entries grew frantic. His sentences broke. Ink smudged across the page. The last line trailed into madness. They are everywhere, even in my dreams. The man himself was never found. Only his journal drifted back, a broken testament to ambition undone by fear. Treasure hunters came with different dreams. They believed Snake Island hid more than snakes. Some whispered of pirate gold, buried centuries ago. Others spoke of relics left by tribes who worshipped the serpent god. These men carried shovels, maps scratched with red marks, compasses that shook as if confused. One group was said to have landed on the North Shore. 3 men with packs filled with tools. They lit a small fire by night. Locals watching from boats anchored far off claimed they saw figures moving in the glow. And then, suddenly, the fire died. By dawn, no men remained. Only ashes carried by the wind. Weeks later, one of their shovels washed up on a distant beach, rusted bent, as though someone had snapped it in half. No bodies ever surfaced. No graves were ever found. It was as if the island had swallowed them whole. Detective-minded sailors began to notice a pattern. Each attempt to conquer Snake Island ended the same way. A boat vanished. A body washed ashore. A journal ended mid-sentence. Evidence always drifted back, but never the men themselves. It was as if the island left fragments behind, reminders carved in salt and wood, but kept the rest. The mystery deepened with one particular case. A large expedition set out, 10 men strong, carrying rifle supplies, even dogs to guard them. Locals watched the boat sail into the mist. Days passed, then weeks, and finally, the boat returned empty. It drifted back to shore without a single man aboard. The supplies still stacked neatly, the rifles untouched, the dogs gone. Only silence filled the boat, as though every life had been lifted away without struggle. Fishermen who inspected it swore that it smelled strange, not of sea or rot, but of something metallic, like blood, though none was visible. They pushed the boat back into the current, unwilling to keep it near their homes. More journals told similar tales. Half-finished sentences scrawled in haste, words ending midline. Ink smeared as though the writer's hand had been torn away. One read, "We hear them even when they're not here." Another said, "The jungle moves against us." The final entry of one explorer ended with, "If this is found, tell them it was not the snakes." Those words have haunted scholars for decades. If not the snakes, then what? Theories grew like weeds. Some claimed the smugglers were killed by each other, greed turning to violence. Others said storms dragged their boats beneath the waves. But those explanations could not erase the patterns, the puncture marks, the silence, the journals cut short. And then there's a darker belief that the island itself consumes those who intrude. That Snake Island is more than land. It is a living thing, feeding not only on the bodies of men, but on their minds, their souls, their memories. That is why the boats return empty. That is why journals stop midline. Because the island does not only kill, it erases. Researchers who study fear say this idea is what makes the stories unforgettable. It is not only death that frightens us. It is the thought of vanishing without trace, of being swallowed by something larger than comprehension. Snake Island carries that fear like a shadow. Even today, locals refuse to approach. They point to the water and shake their heads. They say the island takes who it wants. It keeps them in silence, beneath its canopy, beneath its stones. And when it has had its fill, it sends back fragments, a boot, a shovel, a page from a journal. Tokens of warning to those who still dream of setting foot there. The vanishing explorers have become part of the island's legend. They are not remembered for treasure or for glory. They are remembered as names scratched in journals that end too soon, as faces never found, as voices lost to the hiss of serpents and the silence of the jungle. And so Snake Island stands, surrounded by mist, guarded by vipers, its story written not in history books but in fragments carried by the sea. Each vanished man is a line in that story, Each empty boat, each broken map, each torn journal is another chapter. The island does not need to defend itself. It does not need armies or walls. Its silence is enough. Its serpents are enough. Its hunger is enough. And those who dream of conquering it, those who imagine gold or power waiting beyond its cliffs, must remember the explorers who came before, men who rode with courage, who stepped ashore with fire in their hearts, who vanished without sound. For Snake Island does not bargain. It does not forgive. It only takes. And the ocean carries back the evidence, scattering it on distant shores, like whispers of a truth no one dares to face, that the vanishing explorers were never lost. They were claimed by a place where science meets myth, where silence holds voices, where the line between land and death disappears. Snake Island does not let go. Whispers spread faster than truth, and in the case of Snake Island, whispers have become shadows, each darker than the last. It was one thing to believe the golden lancehead viper was born of isolation, a cruel twist of natural evolution. But some began to wonder, what if it was not nature at all? What if Snake Island was not simply cursed by chance, but by design? Conspiracies grew in taverns, in quiet meetings of sailors, and in the backrooms of governments. Men asked questions that had no simple answers. Why does one island hold more venomous serpents than any other place on Earth? Why does a species so rare, so lethal, exist only there? Why is it so fiercely protected, sealed away from the world? To many, these questions pointed in one direction. Snake Island was never meant to be discovered. It was meant to be hidden. The theory most whispered is that it was once a site of experiments, that governments long ago used the island as a testing ground, a place far from the eyes of the public where mistakes could be buried in silence. Some say scientists were brought there to manipulate nature, to create serpents stronger, faster, deadlier than any found in the wild. A weapon not made of steel or fire, but fangs and venom. The golden lancehead, with its venom that melts flesh and blood at terrifying speed, seems too perfect a killer to be accident, too refined, too precise. Some argue it feels like the outcome of design, a serpent shaped as though the island itself were a laboratory of death. Documents have been rumored, fragments said to exist in dusty archives, naval logs that mention biological trials near the coast, reports of shipments to the island, marked not with goods, but with numbers and codes. None have been proven, but each adds fuel to the fire of suspicion. The psychological effect of such ideas is heavy, for the island was a stage for experiments. Then what else was created there? Were the snakes the first trial, or the last? Were other creatures bred, tested, then destroyed when they grew too dangerous? Could the jungle hide remains not only of ancient tribes, but of human work, abandoned labs, broken cages, rusted equipment buried beneath vines? Some explorers claim they have seen evidence. Metal fragments tangled in roots, concrete foundations swallowed by moss, shapes too straight, too sharp to belong to nature alone. These claims are dismissed by most, but to those who unbelieve, they are proof that the island hides human secrets, not just natural ones. And then there is the silence of the government itself. The Brazilian Navy patrols its waters, forbidding entry. Permits are granted only to scientists, and even they are closely monitored. Why guard it so heavily if it is nothing more than a dangerous piece of land? Why protect serpents as though they were treasures? Unless, perhaps, the island holds something no one dares reveal. The conspiracy deepens with tales of soldiers. Some say military units once landed there, tasked with clearing the snakes to build a station. They did not return. Others claim chemical weapons were tested on the island. Poisons released into the jungle to see how the serpents would endure. If true, then Snake Island is not only cursed by nature, but poisoned by man. But conspiracies are never clear. For each story of human interference, there are those who argue the opposite, that no experiment could ever match the cruelty of natural evolution. That Snake Island is proof not of human error, but of nature's power, that in its silence and shadows, the earth itself created something more terrifying than anything men could build. And yet, doubts linger. One scientist who studied the island returned with eyes hollow and hands shaking. He destroyed his notes, refusing to speak of what he had seen. But before his silence became permanent, he told one colleague a single sentence. It was not natural. Those words alone spread like wildfire, feeding theories that will never die. The psychology of the island fuels a conspiracy. Human minds struggle to accept randomness when faced with such horror. It is easier, in some way, to believe in a curse, a plan, a hidden hand, than to accept that nature itself could shape such destruction by chance. The golden lance head becomes more than a snake. It becomes a question of whether mankind is witnessing accident or punishment. Religious voices even enter the debate. Some call it a garden of wrath, planted by higher powers to remind humanity of its limits. Others say it is a gate, a living barrier to protect something buried beneath, ancient treasure, forbidden knowledge, or perhaps a wound in the earth itself. Stories spread of tunnels under the island, carved not by nature but by hands, of chambers where light does not reach, of artifacts that glow faintly when touched, guarded by serpents who strike at anyone who dares to draw close. None of this is proven, but proof is not needed for mystery. Mystery survives best in absence. The more the island resists explanation, the more it becomes a mirror for fear. Every unanswered question is filled by the imagination, and imagination is often darker than truth. Some say the snakes themselves are experiments gone wrong, bred to be weapons but left uncontrolled when the project was abandoned. Others say they are experiments gone right, doing exactly what they were designed for, protecting the island from trespassers forever. And if that is true, then the island is not cursed. It is guarded. Imagine stepping onto the soil with that thought in mind, that every snake you see is not just an animal, but a sentinel, that the hiss in the grass is not random, but warning, that the silence of the jungle is not emptiness, but judgment, for the conspiracies do not stop with the past. Some believe the island is still in use, that even today, hidden ships dock by night, carrying supplies to underground stations, that research continues in silence, far from the eyes of the world, that somewhere beneath the canopy, men in white coats still study the venom, still test the boundaries of fear. If true, then Snake Island is more than myth. It is a living experiment, an open-air cage where serpents are not prisoners, but wardens. But whether curse or experiment, design or accident, one truth remains unshaken. The island does not welcome man. It does not forgive intrusion. Those who step foot on its soil do not return unchanged, if they return at all. And so, the question burns in every mind. Is Snake Island the cruelest accident of nature, or the most dangerous creation of mankind? The answer may never be known. And perhaps that is the greatest terror of all. For certainty is comfort, but mystery lingers. Mystery haunts. Mystery whispers in the dark, leaving men to wonder if the horror they face is born of the earth or of themselves. Snake Island holds that mystery close, like treasure in its heart. A treasure of questions with no answers, guarded by serpents whose fangs speak louder than any words. A cursed experiment or an accident of time. Whichever it is, it reminds humanity of its place. Small, fragile, mortal, and in the silence of the jungle, the truth remains hidden, perhaps by chance, perhaps by design, perhaps by both. There are places in this world that seem still, silent, empty, yet Snake Island is not still, and it is not empty. Those who walked its soil say it moves, it shifts, it breathes. They swear the ground itself has a pulse, and once you hear it, you never forget. Survivors, the few who live to tell their tale, describe nights when the jungle turned alive in ways beyond imagination. The air grew heavy, the silence grew deep, and then came the sound. A low, steady rhythm. Grass moving in waves without wind. Leaves swaying as though drawn by unseen lungs. The island itself inhaling, exhaling, as though it were not land at all, but a body. Some claimed it was only nerves, the mind breaking under fear. But too many said the same thing. They heard the hiss of serpents not as individuals, but as one chorus, one voice rising and falling in unison. The snakes moved together, their scales brushing against stone and soil in perfect rhythm, like the beat of a heart. 1,000 bodies slithering as one, creating the sound of breath. It was in those moments that survivors realized a terrible truth. They were not surrounded by snakes. They were inside something greater, a living, pulsating entity, eternal and merciless, wearing the disguise of soil, roots, and stone. The thought alone was enough to break a man's will. For how you fight not an animal, not a predator, but an island? How do you resist when every tree could be a vein, every shadow a lung, every serpent a cell in a larger body? Those who stayed longest began to lose their sense of reality. They wrote in journals that the earth beneath them quivered, as if shifting with each breath. They described standing still and feeling vibrations rise through their boots, a rhythm that did not match the sea or the wind, a rhythm that felt alive. One explorer wrote that when he placed his hand on a stone, it pulsed beneath his palm. He pulled away in terror, but the sensation remained, crawling into his skin, into his mind. He swore the stone itself was flesh, hardened by time, but still part of something vast. At night, dreams grew darker. Men spoke of visions where the island swallowed them whole, pulling them into ground, binding them with roots that were not roots, but veins. They woke drenched in sweat, their ears filled with the endless hiss that no longer seemed to come from snakes, but from the island itself, whispering, warning, commanding. Psychologists who study fear say such accounts are symptoms of madness brought by stress and venom in the air. But the detail of those accounts, the unity of their voices, makes it hard to dismiss. Different men, different times, all speaking the same words. It breathes. There's a point in every legend when myth becomes more real than fact. Snake Island reached that point long ago. The golden lancehead became not just a predator, but a messenger. Each viper another heartbeat in the island's body. Each strike another reminder that those who walk there are trespassers not on land, but within a living prison. Some conspiracies go further still. They suggest the island is not simply alive, but aware that it hungers, waits, and chooses who will be taken. That those who vanish into its jungle do not merely die, but are absorbed, their bodies broken down into the soil, their voices joining the hiss of serpents in the canopy. Stories from survivors support this fear. Men spoke of hearing words in the grass, whispers in the leaves, voices of their lost companions calling their names. At first faint, then louder, until the line between memory and reality dissolved. Were these hallucinations? Or were they the echoes of men who had already been claimed? One smuggler, half mad when found drifting back to the mainland, repeated the same phrase until his final breath. It knows my name. Doctors dismissed him as broken by venom and terror, but his words linger. For how does an island know a man's name? Unless it listens, unless it remembers, unless it lives. The breathing of Snake Island has been described as both sound and feeling. At times it is heard in the rustling canopy, waves of movement flow like lungs expanding and collapsing. At other times it is felt in the chest, a pressure that rises and falls, matching the beat of a heart, not one's own. To stand in such a place is to feel not like an intruder on land, but like prey trapped inside something vast and unseen. And once that realization takes hold, fear changes. It no longer belongs to survival. It belongs to inevitability. For how can one escape the breath of an island? How can one run from lungs as large as the sea? Some survivors claim that the snakes themselves follow the rhythm. They move not randomly, but in waves, rippling across the ground in patterns that match the unseen breath. Hundreds moving together, pausing together, striking together, as though controlled by one will. To witness it was to see not animals, but organs working in harmony, part of something greater. It is here that science and myth collide most violently. Science calls it coincidence, survival instinct, a quirk of evolution magnified by fear. Myth calls it the heartbeat of a god, a serpent spirit too vast to be seen in one form. And between these two lies a mystery that grips the human mind. Was Snake Island created by chance, or is it alive by design? Is it a prison for serpents, or are the serpents pieces of a larger creature, guardians that are not separate, but parts of a single body? The survivors never agree, except on one thing. Once you hear the island breathe, you are never the same. One researcher abandoned his career after hearing it. He could not bear to lecture in halls, to write papers, to analyze data, because in every silence he heard it again, the long, slow inhale, the hiss of scales moving as one. It followed him in dreams, in waking, in the quiet between heartbeats. Another, a sailor who drifted too close, said the sound filled his chest like drowning, pressing against his lungs until he thought they would burst. He swore the island was pulling the air from him, breathing him in, making him part of its endless cycle. Even locals who never stepped foot there claimed to hear it. On stormy nights, when the wind carries across the waves, they say the sound reaches the coast. A low hum, a hiss that stretches for miles. Mothers hush their children when it comes, whispering that the island is restless again, that it stirs in its sleep, waiting for the next trespasser. Whether true or not, the fear is enough. No fisherman dares anchor too near. No smuggler sails without dread. For they all know the same thing. If the island breathes, then it is not simply land. It is a beast. And a beast that breathes must one day feed. To stand on Snake Island is to stand inside that beast, to feel the soil tremble like muscle, to hear the canopy rustle like lungs, to watch serpents move like veins alive with blood. It is to realize that the ground beneath your feet is not ground at all, but flesh. Flesh too vast to see whole, too ancient to name, too merciless to resist. The island that breathes does not need to chase. It only needs to wait. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat of those who walk there is already inside its body, already part of its rhythm, already marked as its own. And so the legend grows. Snake Island is not only cursed, it is alive, a breathing, pulsating entity, eternal, merciless. And for those who step inside, there is no fight to win. There is only surrender to something larger than fear, larger than life itself. The island breathes, and in its breath men vanish. There are places on this earth that resist answers, places where science bends, where myth lingers, and where silence speaks louder than truth. Snake Island is one of them. For centuries, it has remained forbidden, a dot on the map sealed by law, surrounded by warnings, guarded by the sea. Governments say it is closed to protect lives. Scientists argue it must remain untouched for study. Locals whisper it is not to be disturbed at all. Whatever the reason, the outcome is the same. No one may step freely onto its soil. And yet, the legends do not stop. They grow darker with time. Survivors speak not only of venom, but of something else, of serpents moving together in ways too precise to be chance, of waves of golden scales rippling as one body, of eyes that linger too long, too knowing, as though the snakes are not merely beasts, but watchers. The thought is unsettling. What if they are changing? What if the serpents, cut off from the world for thousands of years, are not only growing deadlier, but smarter? What if their movements, their patterns, are not instinct, but design? Some researchers suggest the golden lanceheads are showing signs of coordination, not just gathering around prey, but herding it, not just striking in chance, but waiting, surrounding, choosing, a behavior that feels less like animal hunger and more like strategy. And if that is true, then the island is no longer only dangerous, it is preparing. What happens when the serpents no longer need the island? When the boundaries that cage them are no longer strong enough? When one storm, one fallen tree, one human mistake allows them to slip beyond their shores? The ocean is wide, but snakes have been found drifting on logs, carried by currents for miles. What if one golden lancehead reaches another coast? What if more follow? The thought chills the blood because it asks a question most prefer not to face. What if Snake Island is not a prison, but a cradle? A place where something has been allowed to grow, waiting for the day it spreads beyond its cage. Folklore always warned of this. Ancient voices spoke of a serpent god whose children guarded forbidden treasure. But perhaps the treasure was never gold or relics. Perhaps the treasure is the serpents themselves, a creation of isolation, a weapon of nature, a curse meant to stay hidden. And yet, history shows us that nothing hidden stays so forever. Curiosity always pushes forward. Smugglers, explorers, treasure hunters, they all tried and most vanished. But what happens when someone succeeds? What happens when greed or arrogance or ambition tears open what was meant to remain sealed? The eternal mystery of Snake Island lies not only in what it is, but in what it might become. To stand at the shore and see its mist rise is to feel the weight of questions that have no answers. Is it nature's cruel accident? Or is it something shaped by hands unseen? Is it alive, breathing, watching, waiting? Or is it silent stone cursed only by myth? No matter which path you believe, one truth is certain. Snake Island has claimed countless lives, and it will claim more. It has no mercy, no need for reason. Its serpents strike without thought, yet perhaps not without purpose. The island does not forgive those who step within its breath, and yet we are drawn to it. That is the power of mystery. The unknown calls to us, even when it terrifies. We cannot resist asking what lies beyond the veil. We cannot silence the thought. What if the serpents grow more coordinated? What if they are no longer bound by their island? What if one day the prison opens and the killers will then find new ground to claim? The ocean waits between us and them, but oceans can be crossed. Snake Island remains silent in the fog, guarded by golden scales and whispered legends. Its truth is sealed in venom and shadow. Its mystery lingers in journals cut short, in boats returned empty, in survivors who speak with hollow eyes. And perhaps that is why the island endures in our imagination, because it is not finished. Its story is not closed. Its breath still moves, its serpents still watch, its hunger still waits. Snake Island is not only a place, it is a question that will not die. Would you dare step foot there? Would you test the silence for yourself? Hear the breath? See the golden scales ripple in the shadows? Or would you keep your distance, letting the mystery live on untouched, a warning carved into the sea? The choice is not ours. The island chooses. And now, I leave the question with you. What do you believe? Is Snake Island only legend, or is it something far greater, far darker than any legend could hold? If this story has stirred your curiosity, if it has left you thinking of shadows, of serpents, of mysteries too deep to solve, then carry it with you. Share it with others who crave the unknown. Let them walk these words as you have, through silence, through fear, through wonder, like this story if it held you. Share it so others may feel the same shiver of the unknown. And subscribe if you seek more journeys into forbidden lands and cursed places. For the world is wide and mysteries still breathe. And somewhere off the coast of Brazil, an island waits, breathing, watching, eternal.